Davidiy, I represent Brit-Am Hebrew nations, an organisation that researches the whereabouts of the lost 10 tribes, and we have found them amongst Western nations. That is where the lost 10 tribes are, and we use numerous fields of research to ascertain and to confirm these findings. The lost 10 tribes are amongst Western nations. This is what we do: research the subject, we spread knowledge of our findings, and work towards reconciliation of the Jewish and the Israelite nations from the 10 tribes who are not aware of their ancestry on the whole in the West. The lost 10 tribes now are in the West, and a major section of the lost 10 tribes are the English-speaking peoples, the so-called Anglo-Saxons. It actually includes everyone from the British Isles and all of their descendants overseas in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the USA, and so on. That is where the lost 10 tribes are, as well as being elsewhere in Western Europe, but within the British Isles is the centre. That is also where the tribes of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh were to be found, and they are, as if to say, were the heads of the lost 10 tribes who had a task of their own to fulfill. And now we are about to discuss the Tudor Rose. The Tudor Rose is a symbol of the British Monarchy and of England. And in a sense it still is. Tudor Rose still is a representative of England and of Britain. And how did the Tudor Rose arise? So there was a civil war, as I say, in 1450 CE to 1485, a civil war between rival houses, each wanting their own candidate to become the King of England. The war was between two different sides. One was headed by the House of York, which was represented by a white rose, whereas the other side was represented by a red rose, the House of Lancaster. Historically, this may not be exactly true, but this is how the situation was represented after the war was terminated. The conqueror, the one who came out on top after they fought between each other, was Henry Tudor, a Welshman. Henry Tudor, his personal emblem was the dragon of Wales. But he married the candidate from the opposing side, and he wanted to present himself as representing a unification of the two sides of the two opposing bodies. So he put the two roses together and he came up with what is known as the Tudor Rose. The Tudor Rose has an inner section of 5 white roses and an outer section of 5 red roses, and it is surrounded by 5 green leaves, and that is how it is presented. See the illustrations. There are variations, but on the whole that is how the Tudor Rose is presented. That is what the Tudor Rose is. And this became the symbol of the Tudor dynasty and of England in general. And also I saw a booklet of the coronation of Queen Elizabeth, and there they showed the Tudor Rose on some of the symbols used. It still is a representative of the British monarchy and of English people in general. And we may also say this is symbolic, beyond that Henry Tudor was a new king, a new type of monarchy, a new type of rulership. He began the modernization of Britain, of England, one could say, because through Henry Tudor the basis was laid to make England a great country, and ultimately through England Britain. He improved the navy, he established the finances, he began exploration in North America, laid the foundations of Canada, and so on. And this was followed on by those who came after him, by Henry VIII and by Elizabeth, and this was the beginning of making England a great nation. Before then it was powerful, it was a force to be reckoned with, but also economically and not very significant, and its population was small. But from the time of Henry Tudor things began to change. It became an international force and a great empire. The British Empire was grew out of this. And so we have the Tudor Rose as somehow representative of all of this. But what is interesting is that we have a book, a Jewish religious book known as the Zohar. The Zohar is became public in 1290 approximately, but it was known, it's proven, internal evidence shows it to have been based on very ancient sources, going back, ancient sources go several centuries back, and even then based on the further and beyond that, based on the Bible, based on traditions. And it is basically a book of mystical introspection, or spiritual exercises, of theology, of what it could be called religious philosophy based on intuition, combined with deduction, with the emphasis on intuitive understanding. And in the Zohar it says, "As the rose is among the thorns, so is my love among the maidens." That is quoting from the Song of Solomon 2:2. The Song of Solomon is written by King Solomon, and he says, "As the rose among the thorns, so is my love among the maidens." So the Zohar comments on this verse. What is the rose? It is the assemblage of Israel, the community of Israel. For there is a rose above and a rose below, just as the rose which has among the thorns is red and white. So does the assemblage of Israel have justice and mercy. Just as the rose has 13 petals, so does the assemblage of Israel have 13 measures of compassion, comparing it. 5 leaves surround the rose. So here this rose is described, this rose of Israel is described as having both red and white petals and having 5 leaves around it. And this is very similar to the Tudor Rose. Here it says 13 petals, apparently representing the 13 tribes when you count Levi, include Levi in the quorum, and also count Joseph as their prime minister. You actually have 13 tribes. Though in the Bible they always try and juggle the counting so that you come out with 12, but actually there were 13 tribes, and and according to these 13 petals described by the Zohar represent the 13 tribes. But here the Tudor Rose has only 10. But the Tudor Rose could be said to represent the 10 tribes. The 10 tribes, because Britain was to head the 10 tribes. Joseph was to head the 10 tribes. The other 2 tribes, or even 3 tribes, were with Judah. Originally we had 12 tribes of Israel. 12 tribes of Israel were joined together in one kingdom under King Saul, King David, and King Solomon. After the death of King Solomon, Rehoboam, in English transliteration, became king. He refused to consider an alleviation of taxes, so the northern 10 tribes rebelled against him and set up their own kingdom of Israel. They were headed by Jeroboam from the tribe of Ephraim, which is a subsection of Joseph. And they broke away and formed their own kingdom. Later, a few centuries later, the Assyrians came down, conquered all of the northern kingdom and exiled all of its inhabitants, took them away into various areas, sections of the Assyrian Empire, but they retained something of their cohesion despite the fact that they were taken into exile, and they rebelled in exile, or somehow or other in different manners. They asserted their independence. They broke away from the Assyrians. They moved to the north and moved to the west, and we have shown how eventually all of them converged in the west. They converged in the west, especially in the British Isles, and this is had been predicted by the Bible, as we have shown, and this is confirmed by historical sources and also by all related fields of evidence. The lost 10 tribes are in the west. What we had 2 divisions. We had a division between the 10 tribes in the north, 2 tribes in the south. The 2 tribes who remained were known as the Kingdom of Judah, and they comprised at first the tribe of Judah, and the tribe of Benjamin. We read in the Bible, after the division between Jeroboam in the north and Rehoboam in the south, Rehoboam was over the tribes of Judah and Benjamin. We read that the Levites came to Rehoboam in the south. It says concerning King Rehoboam, 2 Chronicles 11, verse 13, the priests and the Levites who were in all Israel presented themselves to him from all their territories. The Levites had left their common lands and the holdings and had come to Judah and Jerusalem because Jeroboam and his sons had prevented them from serving as priests of the Lord, and had appointed his own priests for the high places and for the god demons and for the calves that he had made. Those who had set their hearts to seek the Lord God of Israel came after them from all the tribes of Israel to Jerusalem to sacrifice to the Lord, the God of their ancestors. They strengthened the kingdom of Judah, and so on. So here we read that the Levites left King Jeroboam in the north. The Levites have been scattered throughout all of the other tribes, and they came to Rehoboam in the south. The tribe of Levi had been scattered throughout all of the other tribes, but then Jeroboam began to set up his own independent, his own religion, his own religious beliefs. And he began to set up his own religious belief, his own religion, his own pagan religions, and he appointed people from the lower classes who were not from the tribe of Levi as priests. So therefore all of the tribe of Levi moved to the south, they moved to Judah. So therefore we have Judah representing 3 tribes, 3 of the tribes, whereas 10 tribes were in the north. But later on other remnants, refugees from the north also came into Judah, but they were not important in their own rights. Their tribal expression was reached through the 10 tribes, through their brethren who were in the 10 tribes who were exiled, as Nachmanides Ramban emphasizes. So therefore we have 10 tribes in the north, 10 tribes out of 13 in the north, and they are represented by the Tudor Rose with its 10 petals, and with its 10 red and white petals, and the 5 leaves are still surrounding it. And this is nothing is by chance. This shows us that there was such a thing as the Tudor Rose, and the Tudor Rose is representative of Israel according to the Zohar. And the Zohar is considered authoritative, or at least inspired, and not to be dismissed. This is what we have. We also should note that in the United States Congress in 1986 chose the rose as the national flower of the USA. And in Jewish liturgy, in the Jewish prayer book, the expression Shoshana Yaakov, the rose of Jacob, is taken to represent all of Israel. Also we have Hosea 14:5. I will be as a Jew unto Israel, who shall grow as the lily and cast forth his roots as the Lebanon. The word translated as lily in Hebrew is Shoshana, and this actually means a rose. So here too Israel is compared to a rose, even in biblical sources. Thank you. May the Lord God of Israel bless all of you.